Welcome to the Lion's Share, where we like to talk family, faith, football, finance, and fun. And today's guest, I'm really excited to have on because this guy he's got a lot of stories on all five of those things. He's got some tight family stories, his faith, football, obviously, finance. I want to get into some of that because it's some of the things I was thinking about as leading up to this interview. Just things that I like to talk to him about, and then fun, man. He's had an interesting life, and some fun times are on the way. So I'd like to welcome Tony Mandarich to the show, and welcome Tony.
Mitch, thanks for having me, my friend.
Yeah, so we were kind of chuckling before we went live here, but I was a teammate of Tony's at Michigan State. I came in as a scrawny little freshman in the fall of 1988, and Michigan State was coming off their first Rose Bowl in decades, and they had I think we had like 17 or 18 starters coming back off that team. So I
Yeah.
signed with George Perles and the Spartans, thinking we were gonna probably go to a couple more Rose Bowls. I was gonna ride Tony's and Andre Rison's coattails to another Rose Bowl. And lo and behold, we start off the season 0-4-1. So it didn't go quite as planned, Tony.
No, and we wanted to go to the Gator Bowl that year, so we
You did.
adjusted our
You
schedule.
did. You know what? And
No,
there's a lesson in
yeah,
everything.
that's right.
I
That's
mean,
right.
George, he'd always promise us, "Hey guys, one game at a time, right? We had to
Yeah.
win six straight to even make a bowl game, and
Kept
we
it
did."
simple. Yeah,
Yeah,
simple, fundamental. There's a lot
yeah.
of those things that in the Georgisms, right? And you've
Oh yeah,
heard them all, I'm sure. They still practice a lot of that stuff today.
every day.
Nothing good happens after midnight is like a great one.
Who drives? The dummy drives. Yeah.
Right, the dummy drives, right? And but yeah, a lot of those little cheesy cliches that he used to say that we used to roll our eyes about. It's like, wow, he was right.
We all speak the same language. My kids are sick of
Yes.
hearing those things. In fact, I was just on my team meeting with my team today, and I said, "Listen, guys, there's no new ideas, man. There's no quotes that are original as far as what I'm spewing out there. It's stuff I've heard
Right.
for the last 30 years, and a lot of it from football
Yeah.
coaches specifically."
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'll share just, a little story. My first practice at MSU, you probably wouldn't remember this because I was a blip on your radar at that time, but my first practice, Tony has been suspended for 3 games because you had
Yeah.
written the NFL to see if you could hit the supplemental draft after coming off the
Correct.
Rose Bowl year. And then you took
Correct.
your name out. They said everything was fine, and then the NCAA, and all their infinite wisdom, decided you should
Yeah.
be suspended the whole year. You
Right.
appealed it, as I recall, and it got reduced to 3 games, right?
Correct.
So Tony, as I recall, wasn't too happy about the 3 games. So
No.
I'm the lucky guy that gets to hold the bag the first practice that we're in pads. And I remember Coach Beckholt, who was my tight end coach and my main recruiter at Michigan State. He says, "Mitch, grab the bag," and Tony's in the chute, and you come firing out, and it's morning dew on the grass, and you come out pissed off at the world and nail me, and I got my legs extended. I'm on skates. I'm going back about 50
Right.
yards, sliding across the grass. Thank God it was slippery because you
Yeah.
probably would have buried me right off the get-go. I just kept sliding. And I come run, you take the bag, and I go running to get back in the back of the line. And Coach Beckel just kind of gives me that little slide grin and says, "Welcome to the Big Ten." So that was my
We had a lot of
introduction to
fun.
Michigan State
We had a lot
football.
of
So
fun. Yeah. It was probably just the dew on the grass that,
probably was.
I
Probably had
mean,
nothing to do with
otherwise,
probably had nothing to do with the strength differential at that point. So
yeah,
yeah, so well,
it's,
let's hit on that a little bit. We'll
yeah,
start at MSU because I mean, you for me as a young kid, I mean, you were bigger than life, and
right.
honestly, yeah, you kind of I look at it now and I think about, geez, you at that age in this day and age with
Yeah.
social media, and I mean, let's face it,
Yeah.
you were a pretty good self-promoter, right? And to
Yeah.
think what you could have done in today's day and age, with that in
Yeah. With
terms
the
of the
NIL money.
Oh, NIL money and just
Yeah.
social media followers and stuff. It was just a
Yeah.
different time, but you were ahead of the curve on that. I'll give you credit for that. And maybe
Thank
in
you.
some ways it hindered your progress, looking back on
Correct.
it through an old
Yeah.
man's eyes. But what are your thoughts on that as you see NIL unfold now and you think back to your days, what that could have meant for you at the time?
I do ponder that for very brief moments these days
Yeah,
because it's like, well, I could have, how much money we could have made. I mean, realistically now, I mean, it's not crazy to say could have made more money in NIL than I did in the pros.
right.
And, and probably the most recent example would be Johnny Manziel. I mean, if he was in, college when they had the NIL, and I mean, the amount of money he would have made was ridiculous. But you know what? We're not. The facts are we weren't.
No doubt.
The facts are, when I got drafted in '89, signed a healthy, deal and was one of the first offensive linemen to make a seven-figure salary, which opened the door for other offensive linemen the next year. But if you look 10 years prior to that, if you go to 1979 and look at what offensive linemen were making, it was like I was making 10 times more than they were making in
Right.
10 years.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like it's kind of like the perspective that it gives me. It's
Yeah.
like,
No
well,
doubt.
and it is what it is. And I don't have any problem with the college players getting paid. I have a, I have a personal issue with the transfer portal. I
Yeah.
think that there
That's
should
my
be a
big thing.
consequence. Yeah, there should be and I say consequence, not even a consequence. It's just like, look, if you transfer, you have to give something. And whether that is, it used to be a full season of, not being eligible to play. Um, it needs to be something, or it needs to be tweaked or changed. I don't think that that's helping the game, because these guys at this age, and you and I both know that age, we're chasing money. I mean, we're gonna, if the money's there, we're gonna be crazy not to take it.
Yeah, and I think it's hurt the game. I mean, I'm all about capitalism, and yeah, because
Yep.
I remember figuring out the math back at Michigan State, right? I just put this, I
Yep.
mentioned this in a post on LinkedIn here recently, but I remember doing the math and the hours you spent on, working out and study
Yep.
table and off-season
Yep.
training and all this, right? And it
Yep.
really came out and divided that into divided your tuition money that you were getting. You were making less than
Right.
minimum wage, right? And wait a minute,
Probably.
what's my hourly wage where, what's my hourly
Right.
rate?
Right.
And it's
Right.
crazy. But my problem with it is, like you said, I mean, a kid could go to 4 schools in 4 years. I don't even know who's on the
Yeah.
team. Michigan State, I think, has
Yeah.
60 new players this year. I mean, I don't even know who's on the team at
Yeah.
this point, right?
Yeah.
It's hurt the game
Yeah.
that way from a fan's perspective. It's great for the
Yeah.
kids. Hey, they're getting money. I'm all about it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it does lessen, I think, the attractiveness of college
Yeah.
football. So,
And I think that's one of the reasons Coach Saban left the game.
oh, I would imagine
Uh,
that without a
I
doubt.
think it's probably 51% of the reason, because he still has a lot of gas in his tank. You
Oh
can
yeah.
tell. And I mean, he's already got a dynasty. He really has nothing else to prove. But I know he just loves to coach and develop, kids through college, and prep them for the pros or prep them for life. And when he retired, it's like I was surprised, but I wasn't shocked because of the circumstances of college football these days.
Yeah, I'm always amazed that Tom Izzo keeps going, because they're kind
Right?
of cut from the same cloth in terms of
Yeah.
personality, and Tom keeps
Yeah.
going, man. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And he was Judd Heathcote's assistant when I was at
Right,
State.
right.
So it's like to see his whole career unfold is just absolutely awesome.
Yeah. I think Tom made $8,000 his first year as a GA, as he tells the story. So he's coming along. He's doing all right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So I read your autobiography. I'm playing out to Kansas City last week. I had fun going to the kickoff first
Yeah.
NFL game, which was fun. But I read your autobiography that you wrote, I think back in 19, was it?
Yeah.
Or
Or
09.
in 09. Yeah.
Oh
Oh
nine, yeah,
nine.
sorry. It was 20 years after your
Yeah.
last year at State, or
Yeah.
start of your NFL career. And I learned a ton there that maybe I didn't know. I think everyone's, your story with steroids and whatnot, you've been very open about that, and
Yeah.
that's pretty well chronicled. What I wasn't necessarily as familiar with was, the well, a couple of things came up that made me
Sure.
reminded me of a few things. Number one, let's get back to this. This goes into the finance thing as part of finance. Number one, you signed what I think at the time was the biggest contract for an offensive lineman. But before you did that, you held out, and there was talk of you fighting Mike Tyson, which, I'll reserve judgment on what I think would have happened in that scenario. But you never know. Like you said, Buster Douglas beat him, so you had a puncher's
Hey,
chance, I guess. But how
chances
real were
are,
those conversations, Tony? Were there
oh,
actual conversations?
yeah. Yeah, they were legitimate conversations. There was a promoter out in New Jersey named Shelley Finkel.
Yeah, I know the
And
name.
he worked with Lou Duva,
Yep.
who was like at that time he was Evander Holyfield's like
Yeah, I mean, it's
trainer,
big time in
Oscar
boxing.
De La Hoya's, he had big names. And like they called my agent, because you got to remember there's no internet, right? It's not
Right.
like you can look up to see if this person is legitimate or if this company is legitimate. So they called up my agent and they said who they were. And, my agent, I think, did some due diligence. And then my agent calls me and he says, okay, look, I got a crazy thing here from these guys. And they want to know if you're willing to fight Mike Tyson. And I'm like a huge Tyson fan, right? And I'm thinking, wait, did I hear that correctly? they want me to fight Mike Tyson. And I said, I mean, I would do it, but I have to remember I'm going into his arena. It's no different than if you lined him up as a defensive end
Right.
or
Yeah.
a
Wouldn't have
defensive guy,
gone
and
for
he's
him.
got to play against, right. And that's just something that he's not done his whole life, right? So I'm going into his arena. So, and I know the holy terror that he is, right? I mean, he's been knocking people out in the first round.
Yeah.
So I said, well, if we do this, it's got to be worth it. It has to be worth it. And so we set a mark of 10 million, and the offer was 5. And again, it's like,
And at that
looking,
point, to put that in perspective, because some people might say that's not a lot of money. Well, that's 5 years of your
oh
NFL
yeah,
salary at that time, even at five,
exactly,
much less 10
exactly,
million. Yeah.
exactly. In a one night of fighting, and but you also have to take into consideration, in serious consideration, look, the guy can kill you because you're not a boxer.
Yeah.
And it's boxing is just different,
Yeah, for sure.
and I remember telling those guys, like, they flew out to work me out to see if I had any raw skills for boxing, and they said that I did, and that it would just take like 6 to 9 months to prep to at least be respectable. And I remember Luduva talking about, it's not going to be a long fight. It's either he's going to,
Don't worry about the
crush you,
conditioning aspect.
right, right, and or you're going to crush him, or he's going to crush you. And I told him, I said, I got to just be careful he doesn't, I don't get caught and he tags me, because if he tags me, you're done. I mean, you're just done. You're knocked out. But I said, if he starts to dominate the fight where I see I'm not going to win this, I'm just going to throw him over the top
He
rope like a
goes crazy.
wrestler. Give him a DQ, and that way he can't say he beat me.
You could have bit his ear off.
Right. And
That's
it was
incredible. So
probably
was that the summer leading into your first training camp, or what point of the year was that?
yeah, it was late spring. It was
Okay.
late spring, summer, because the SI cover came out in April. The draft happened, then PR things like David Letterman happened, which is national, and just a bunch of other stuff happened. So, and at that time, there was really no competition for Tyson. There was no heavyweight that could challenge him that he hadn't already destroyed. So, they came up with it as obviously it was an entertainment thing. It was a gimmick, an exhibition, if you will. There wasn't not going to be any heavyweight title on the line, because I mean, nor there shouldn't have been, because I didn't earn it if I got lucky and tagged them, right. And believe me, if I would have tagged them and got lucky, I would have been like, yeah, I mean, it was lucky. Let's not kid ourselves here. I mean, the guy's like, an incredible
But
boxer, and
would your NFL career have even happened if that had happened?
I think it would have. I think
Really?
it would have. Yeah.
If you tag him and you knock him out, though, well, number one,
I'm
there's the
undefeated.
rematch. The rematch.
Yeah,
Are
that's
you
true.
kidding
Right,
me?
right, right,
You would
right.
have
That's
made way
true.
more doing that,
It
which
would have been way
leads me
more.
to
Yeah.
another question, because on the lines of finance, and maybe it never crossed your mind. I'm sure it has since, but maybe it never crossed your mind because of the demons you were battling as your NFL career, the initial part of your NFL career faded. But you mentioned the Gator Bowl, and in your autobiography, you chronicle how you beat the drug test for a couple bowl games, right? And the Gator Bowl was one of them. One guy that was on that Georgia team, and I don't even know if you know this, but one of the guys that was on that Georgia team who didn't play because he failed a drug test was Bill Goldberg. Did you know
Oh,
that?
what? No, I didn't.
The wrestler Bill
No, I.
Goldberg. So Bill
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was a teammate of mine in Atlanta. He was a backup
Okay.
DT.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, so I'm back, and I signed with the Steelers after my 4 years in Atlanta. I'm back, and I'm speaking out of elementary school, and the kids are sitting at the lunch table with me, and they say, "Oh, you played in Atlanta. Do you know Goldberg? Do you know the wrestler Goldberg?" And I go, "No." He goes, "Yeah, he played in Atlanta." I go, "Bill Goldberg?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, he's the champ." And I didn't follow
Right,
wrestling, right? I'm
right,
like,
right,
"What?"
right,
Like, yeah, he's on Monday Night Nitro tonight. So I go
right,
and I watch Monday Night Nitro, and he's walking out spitting and hitting himself just like he did and coming out of the locker room, right? And
right, right.
he's the champ, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
then later on in Pittsburgh, one of my teammates' cousins was one of the WWE wrestlers or whatever it was, and they were in town, and they came out to watch practice. And I'm in the
right.
steel hot tub after practice, and this
Yeah.
guy walks up to me, and he comes over, shakes my hand, he says, "Hi, I'm Dwayne Johnson, but they call me The Rock." And I said, "Well,
Oh
I'm
my
Mitch Lyons,
gosh.
and they call me
Right.
Mitch." Chuckling, we laugh, and we get
I
talking.
love
And
it.
this was before he's the big time deal,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
He's
yeah,
on the
yeah,
circuit,
yeah,
but it wasn't until like
yeah,
6 months later that he became the people's champ, and
yeah.
you look back at you, Tony, and I'm thinking to myself as I'm on that plane reading your autobiography, I'm like, man, you could have made a fortune in big time wrestling.
Wrestling.
Did
Yeah.
that ever cross your mind at any point, or
It,
were you ever approached on that?
it did cross my mind. It's funny for me to say this, but I knew how much traveling they did.
Yeah.
And like they were on the road 230, 220 days a year or whatever. And I knew just from people that I knew that were in the sport, um, how much like pharmaceuticals were
Oh,
involved.
I'm sure.
And
Yeah.
and
They're,
now,
I mean,
I'm considering this as I'm
it's
using
fake, but
pharmaceuticals.
they're
Right.
hitting humans that are large, and they're
Yes.
throwing off each other
Yes.
off the floor and the
Yeah.
chairs and all
So
that.
yeah, and it's like, do I want to? I just finished building up all of this skill and talent to try to get drafted, and I put myself in a position. And in wrestling, I think it would have taken time to get a name to get built up. Even though I had the football name, yeah, that would have helped. But I still think that it would have taken a lot of time. Plus, you got to come up with a shtick
Oh
and
yeah.
this and that. And I was like, I'm gonna stick to football
Yeah. But
and go
I
from
think back
there.
to MSU, Tony, as I knew you, man, and I mean, larger than life. I mean, dude, I mean, and what I thought was cool, man, it was what I didn't know is what you got. Obviously you were on. What I didn't know is you were on steroids before you even got to MSU. I always wondered, like,
Yeah,
at what point?
yeah,
Because I mean, let's be
yeah.
honest, and you've been honest. I mean, there was a
Hmm.
pretty high prevalence of steroid use at MSU at that time, and not just at MSU,
And
at
the
all
Big
the
Ten,
schools,
yeah,
because
yep,
they didn't have testing unless you made a bowl game. I
yeah,
remember playing Purdue,
yeah,
not to throw Purdue under the bus, but Purdue's D
right.
line had some of the biggest arms across the board every single year because they never made a bowl game. And these guys, I got a
Right,
picture
right, right,
down the
right,
line my senior year, and
right,
we're all have long
right,
sleeves on because it's colder and snow, and they're all bare
right,
armed, and every single one of them
right.
just got guns, right?
Yeah,
They didn't
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah,
tested.
yeah.
And then you go to the NFL, and all of a sudden you get the slip on your door or in your locker, and
Yes,
you got to get tested randomly all the time, which obviously you couldn't continue to
yes,
use them, and that
correct,
led to some
correct.
other addictions
Yeah,
that are well chronicled that you've shared. And
yep,
but yeah, so at MSU, I just for whatever reason, I didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't even know how much they cost, but I just never, I
right,
was scared to try it, right? So probably a
right,
good thing
right.
in retrospect, but
Very
uh,
good thing.
I never did it, but certainly, prevalent there. And
Yeah,
honestly, I mean, at times I was bitter, right? Because I know guys my age,
yeah, yeah,
some of the guys that came in my class, they started, and because
yeah, yeah,
yeah, no, you see Tony Mandarich kicking butt, and
yeah.
he's using it, and then a couple guys,
Right.
you see this,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you got to keep up. And so there is pressure there,
yeah.
and it was it was the not a very well kept secret across the board. And you look back
No.
at now as a dad and a father, you're like, geez, man, should some people have maybe not looked the other way, and but that it is what it
Right.
is. It's a long time
Yeah.
ago, but the cool thing about your story, Tony, is you went through all that, man. You're at the peak of as high as you can get as a college football
Yeah.
player. Number two pick in the draft, like I said, a great self-promoter on the cover of SI. You can't get any higher, man, but
Right.
you can't fall any harder than you probably did in
Right.
the amount of time that you did. But the real story is, that wasn't the end of the story. Your story is still being written. And what I've just enjoyed as I've done a little research here the last week because I knew we were
Yeah.
going to have this conversation and learning
Yeah.
the things I've learned, in terms of your faith,
Hmm.
growing up in a Catholic home, but maybe not being as tight with the Lord as
Right.
you are now,
Right.
And
Right.
I look back at MSU, and I don't know, where your walk with God was at that point of your life, but for me, I didn't really have that background of growing
Right.
up in a church going home. I didn't know any
Yeah.
of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And as I recall, I'm gonna give a little shout out to one of our teammates that was there at the time because I look back at it now as I'm a believer, and I didn't believe in Christ till '93, my rookie year in the NFL. Okay,
Right. Right.
so but in at MSU, there was only one guy I can think of that wore his faith on his sleeve unapologetically, and it was a outside linebacker Tony Brenningstool.
Oh
And
yeah, you're right.
and
That's right. That's
Tony took a lot of grief, from
yeah, he
people
did.
about that. And I think back
Yeah.
now and I think, man, you know what? That kid had a lot of conviction because
Yes.
that was not it was not
It
the
was not
fertile ground
popular.
for
Right.
for apostleship. Okay,
Right.
and
Right. Right.
he was a guy. And matter of
Yeah.
fact, I was going into my fourth year, redshirt junior year, hadn't hardly played at all, was stuck
Right.
behind a guy in my class
Right.
starting ahead of me. And I basically told Tony he had just he dislocated his shoulder. He was out for the year. He was done. He was a year ahead of me. and we were at camp, and I remember him saying, and I would just told him, I said, man, I think if I don't get more playing time this year, I'm probably just going to graduate and move on and get on with my life. And he said,
Right.
really? He goes, man, I think out of all the tight ends, you have the best chance of making the NFL. And I'm like, what? I mean, I probably played
Right.
about 5 snaps on, 10, or not counting
Right.
goal line. Probably played about
Right.
5 snaps, behind Dwayne Young, and then I got
Yeah.
stuck
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
Kurt
Yeah.
Prince.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I hadn't even played, and yet that guy, he always sticks in my mind because he
Yeah.
gave me that little seed of hope that,
Yes.
man, he believed in me more than I did. And
Yeah.
then 3 games in, I end up starting, and I played
Yeah.
7 years in the NFL. But I was a
Yeah.
whisker
Yeah.
away from just giving up the sport and moving on.
Right.
But I've read and watched interviews of you talking about your faith, right? As that's
Hmm.
matured through your life, and you've
Yeah.
been through some tough time with your brother passing, and
Yep.
I know your mom passed from Alzheimer's and a long
Yep.
struggle. Is
Yep.
dad still alive?
Dad passed February 21st of 2022. He was
Okay.
92.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean he lived. I mean look, his life story
It's
like
yeah.
makes mine pale in comparison.
Right.
Like
Just
it's
wasn't
just incredible.
publicized.
It just wasn't publicized because being a blue collar worker was just not front page news, right? But
Yeah.
the fact that he escaped from communism in Europe in the 50s with my mom, the stuff that they went through, staying in a refugee camp for 9 months while Canada does background checks on them, and then they're allowed to get on the boat to come to Canada, and then they come to Canada with they don't know how to speak English and no money, right?
Yeah.
And like the government, I think my mom said at that point gave them like $20 a week or something, just like from government, new citizens from Europe and stuff. And then, they end up, building a very successful life for themselves.
Yeah.
And obviously, for their kids, my
Sure.
brother and I. And so it's like when I think of all the stories that my mom and dad told me, and then I think, and then when I get kind of in a pity pot about something that's going on in my life, whether it's being at practice and it's 100 degrees out, or even in today's, circumstances, I'm, whining about something to myself. I start thinking about some of the stories they told me, and I think I don't have any problems compared to the stuff they have to go through. So, those are like, I think knowing what they went through, really helped me get through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I know your brother was 5 years older than you, and that's
Yes.
similar to my story. I had an older brother that was 4 grades ahead of me, 4.5 years older.
Okay.
So, that
Yeah.
older brother that I looked up to, right? I
Yeah.
wanted to emulate. He didn't go into football. He was a baseball, basketball
Right.
player. But I always was tagging along, and it sounds like that
Yeah.
was kind of your gig too, right?
Exactly.
Challenged by the older
Exactly.
brother and probably all his
Yes.
friends. So I think
Yeah.
that played a large part in me
Yeah.
excelling in
Yeah.
athletics because I was always playing
Yeah.
up, right? I
Yep.
think
Yep.
of kids today playing up in travel sports. Oh, we didn't even have travel sports, but I was playing up in the
Right.
neighborhood every day, getting my butt
Right.
whipped,
Right. Right. You and
and
me both.
watching NFL football every Sunday. And to this
Yeah.
day, when I hear the clock ticking on 60 Minutes, tick, tick, tick,
Right.
that brings back memories to this day that I'm about to get my butt whipped because that was the end of the second game on NFL, and 60
Right.
Minutes was coming on, and they immediately turned on me, and it was pink belly and eye gouging and ear
Yeah.
thick.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
No, I can relate. I can relate.
yeah, so we have some similarities there. So anyway, so we go back through we go through MSU, we go to the Gator Bowl, and then the thing that sticks out in my mind before you left, Tony, was really probably the last time I've seen you honestly in person was your pro day, right? And
Mm,
I mean, your pro day was ridiculous. Okay,
yeah.
people don't understand, and yes, you're known for having been on steroids, but man. It's like Barry Bonds, right? I mean, yeah,
Right.
Barry Bonds is probably on steroids. He's never admitted, never, whatever. Everybody
Right.
knows he's
Right.
not. He wasn't
Right.
swollen up like that
Right.
in Pittsburgh. But he was a fantastic baseball player before he ever
Yes,
took
he
steroids.
was.
And you, my
Yes.
friend, would have been, and you proved it. You proved it because you came back without steroids
Yeah.
3 years after being out of the game, after battling addiction, played with the Colts,
Yeah.
started with the Colts. I mean, you were a great athlete, but your pro day, I'll never
Thank
forget. I mean,
you.
a tick under 6'6", 315 pounds. And I'm
Yeah.
standing at the finish line of your 40-yard dash, and all these scouts, and I'll never forget it. You come bustling on, and they all hit their stopwatch, and every single one of them looked at their stopwatch, and then they were like looking at the guy next to them because
Right.
they couldn't believe what
Right.
they were reading.
Right.
I mean, you
Yeah.
ran, I think they had you between 4.64 and 4.67. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah,
Insane.
a lot of them, you know, they hit the thing and they put it like they saw the number and they put it to their chest because they thought that they clicked it too soon. But then when they started
They don't want
asking
their
each
buddy thinking they're
other,
crazy, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. So they all
Yeah.
started getting that
I mean,
within, you know, four tenths of a second.
that
So,
is, I tell that story so many times. That is just insane that a human that
yeah,
big can move that
yeah,
fast. And I don't know, remember what
yeah,
your broad jump was, but I know it was up in
yeah.
receiver range.
I can't even
I want
remember.
to say it
I
was
just,
like pushing 11, 10, 8, something like that, where, I mean,
I know it's recorded somewhere,
yeah, it was wide
you know, it's
receiver-esque
like,
though, right?
yeah, and you know, knowing the combine or what the tests were, physical tests. Um, you know, I had worked with the MSU track team and coach
Coach Bibbs. Yeah.
specifically for that 40, because I knew I didn't need to, like, I'm not going to run a 40 like for this when there's this much at stake to, you know, show what you got. If you're going to run a fast 40, show me how to run the fastest 40 from somebody that does it for a living, right?
Right.
Like the track team.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I did.
Yeah.
I tried to explore and exhaust every possible way, you know, to become the best I could be. And, you know, and when I say this next part, this is not rationalizing anything. Um, it's just, these are facts. Like I was, okay. So at that time, when I ran the combine at Michigan State, it had already been 16 weeks that I was off the steroids. So again, I'm going to say that's neither here nor there. But a lot of people will say, well, because you took them, that's why you ran them that fast. And it's like, well, you know, that might have maybe a
Yeah.
little bit to do with it. When you're off 16 weeks, I mean, you're off. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing, there's no lingering or half life advantage that you're going to get. Plus, I knew I was going to get tested. I didn't
Yeah,
want to
and the
mess with
bottom line
that.
is,
And
yeah, I mean, you were a great athlete regardless.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
and the
And when
other,
I came back, when I went to Indy after, like, you know, the 4 years in Green Bay and 3 years out of the league, then I was lucky enough to get an opportunity at Indianapolis. I ended up running a 4.7.
I was going to ask you if they tested you there before they signed you, as far as
Yeah, they did. But I was
yeah,
100% transparent with them before
yeah,
they signed me. And I
sure,
told them, look, you're getting damaged goods. I said
yeah,
that's the simplest way I can put it. All the rumors, not all the rumors, but a lot of those rumors were true. I'm telling you that yes, they are true. And this is what I did. This is exactly what I did. This is exactly what happened. And this is what I did about it 11 months ago
yeah.
to get clean and sober. And they were kind of like jaw dropped. They were like, I'm like, is there
Well,
something I said that? And they're like, well, we're just not used to somebody telling us exactly what happened.
yeah, and I think it
So
was Lindy Infante, right?
yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
which who
Yep.
had been with you in Green Bay. And
Yep.
yeah, so no, I appreciate that, and I think that's something I'll hit on, I guess, because I think that's important for folks listening that
Yep.
have either themselves are battling addiction or
Yep.
have loved ones that are battling addiction. Man, that you can win. It's tough, man, but you
Yep.
checked yourself in.
Yep.
You put the time in, and you're very open and honest about it, and have been, right? and
Yep. Yep.
and the support group has it was very instrumental from what I read in your book, getting you through that time, right? um
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Who you surround yourself with
yeah,
ends up
birds of a
being
feather
crucial.
flock together.
Yes.
That's a
There's
Georgism.
100%.
Yeah.
It's truth. It's true. And, you know, it's like the old, you hang around a barbershop, you're going to get a haircut eventually. And that was a Georgism, right? But
I just got one today. I told him, don't give me the Tony.
I haven't had to go to a
I want
barber
the
in a long
Tony from
time.
'89,
Right.
the nice mullet.
Right. Yeah, that was a style that I wish never was recorded, the mullet,
Was it
but
was
it
it a
is what it
style?
is. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I was trying to set a trend. Who knows? It didn't work.
It
It
was
didn't
everybody
work.
was doing it. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, that for me, I mean, to the depths that you reached in terms of feeding your habit. I mean, the
Yeah.
syringe and the waistband out at practice going into a porta john. I was just like, whoa, man!
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think about that, and it's just that's
Well,
crazy to think.
those are low time. Those are like
Yeah.
low
Yeah, and
times.
then
Yeah.
you're out of the league. You're living in Traverse City, making the drive over to Green Bay. I'm like, man, that is
Yeah.
a powerful
Yeah.
addiction when you're driving to go get
Yeah.
your drugs from a
Yeah.
source that you have over there because you can't find it in
Yeah.
Traverse City. And
Yeah.
but to think that you came from that beat it, and then in a matter of months, you're on an NFL roster after battling
Yeah.
it for years, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
yourself and say, hey, I think I'll start working out again. And the next thing you know,
Yeah.
you went from, I think you said you were down to what, like 250 or something like that, and then
Yeah.
worked your
250. Yeah.
worked your way back up to 300 pounds without,
Yeah. Yeah.
pharmaceuticals and whatnot. And
Yeah.
it's just that's an amazing redemptive story, and that's such a cool part, and probably not a part that is trumpeted enough, right? I mean, people always remember the cover and
Yeah.
this, that,
Yeah.
and but that to me, because that was when I was playing still, and I thought that it
Yeah.
was cool to see you come back and have your moment and really prove it to yourself, right? That hey,
Yeah.
I can do it, right? And
Yeah. And that was the most important part. Like
yeah,
by far, like head and shoulders above being the second player in the taken in the draft, head and shoulders about a 4.64. I mean, none of those things even compare to the fact that I was given a chance to come back because nobody really had to give me a chance. I mean, the
so
reputation I had left was not a good one, and and you know, for me, it was like once I knew that this is only happening by the grace of God, like all the stuff that once I got sober, I was like, there's really with with that faith and belief really anything you put your mind to and prepare for is pretty much possible. Obviously some things are not, but for the most part, anything that's possible you can do, you just got to have a plan
yep.
and you got to lay it out. You got to execute it.
With the faith of a mustard seed, right? And
Oh,
you needed
exactly.
that faith coming from where you were coming from, man. And then
Yes,
credit to your point, credit Mr. Ursay and the Colts organization for giving you that
big time.
opportunity, but credit to you for making it and playing at a high level and being rewarded for that and
Yeah.
starting and so that's awesome. I love that part. You mentioned faith. Is there a certain scripture, Tony, that I know you do. I know you've done a lot of studying of scripture and whatnot, and
Yeah.
finding mentors that are of a strong faith, and
Yeah.
less about the church and more about the relationship with God, right? And
Yes. Yes.
is there a scripture that stands out to you that you hold on to?
I get asked this question a lot. I shouldn't say a lot, but often enough that there are certain scriptures that I really like. Obviously, the armor of God,
Yep.
but a lot of people, talk about that stuff. For me, it was a whole book,
Yeah.
and it was the book of Job.
Okay.
And the
Yeah.
stuff
Talk
when
about
I
a guy that went through
compare,
some trials, right?
right, when I compare my trials to what he had to go through, I'm like, I don't have any problems.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got it pretty good compared to what Job had to go through,
That is so
you know.
true.
So for me, it's like, yeah, it's a scripture. It's actually a whole book.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great and highly applicable
Yes,
to put
yes,
things
and
in
it's
perspective,
probably,
right?
yeah, it's probably why I'm drawn to that book so much is because of yeah, I can relate to that. I can relate to that. A lot of it you can't relate to directly, but there's a lot of times I catch myself when I read Job of like, I don't even know what that would feel like. That's so horrendous. It's like I don't even know, like, and then I think about like my darkest times in my life, and it's like as dark as they were, and I remember those feelings so because I don't want to forget them. It's kind of like what Job went through is
Yeah.
way worse than what I went through. Um, and so it's that one constantly comes up as far as my answer. And I think it's because of the adversity. I mean, adversity would be an understatement to go through all the stuff that he had to go through.
Yeah. That's
Because
that's
his faith didn't waver in anything. It didn't matter if he was making a lot of money and had a family and had everything, or if it was all taken away in a bet.
yeah. And his friends uh
Yeah.
turned on him a little bit, right? I
What do
mean,
you think? We go back to
he
yeah,
didn't
we
have a
go back to
strong
the
support group.
foundation. Right. And your
Yeah.
own friends are saying, you can't, believe that.
Yeah.
You go, why is God doing this to you? And he's like, no, he's like, I'm solid.
Yeah,
And
the one I've always
that's yeah,
held on to is Romans 8:28, and we know that God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose, right? And I look at
yes.
that in the course of your life, right? I mean, hey, you went
Yeah.
through. I mean, you were blessed as blessed can get on the
Yeah.
surface in a worldly manner,
Yeah.
and then it all gets taken away like
Yeah.
Job, right?
Yep.
And then you've rebuilt it, man. And I
Yeah.
just that's a very cool story, and I think it's important
Yeah.
people know that. And like I said, people that are dealing with addictions and
Yeah.
or even just tough times,
Or
right?
anything,
Just tough
anything.
times.
Really, with anything, it's like my faith has got. I was always a believer, always believed, and I always believed in, being born and raised in Catholicism. Always believed in the triune God. Never had an issue with that. Always believed. And when 2020 hit and the world started going sideways, and it was not just the pandemic, there was a lot of things in 2020 and in 2021 that were just didn't make sense. So I thought, one of the things George taught us and Buck Nystrom taught us, I don't think you ever had the privilege
No, he
of
Pat
meeting.
Morris was there my
Yeah,
freshman
and
year.
Pat
So
was great.
yeah,
And Pat was great, but Buck was like a different level of
yeah, I heard the
demanding.
stories.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. Like, if we got our butts kicked in a game, it was usually because we either didn't know our assignments, or we too many mental errors, or we didn't tackle well, or we didn't block well. So we would always go back the next week. And this happened in college and the pros. We'd go back to fundamentals, blocking, tackling, and individual drill. And we'd be like, well, we're pros. We know how to do this. And they'd be like, well, why didn't you do it on Sunday? And then you'd be like, well, yeah, it's true.
The
So you go
film
back to
doesn't lie.
fundamentals, right? The film, the eye in the sky don't lie.
Yeah,
So, but when it came to 2020 and 2021, I got that feeling of, you know what, I need to get back to fundamentals, but you can't block and tackle, because what's kind of skewed in my vision is what's going on in the world. And there were, there was some obvious adversities for all of us. And then, there's more adversities that happen behind closed doors in your personal life. And you think to yourself, like, what is going on here? Some stuff doesn't make sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And I thank God every day to this day for all those adversities that happened 4 years ago, because although I was still a believer my whole life, it made me go to fundamentals. And where was my fundamental? Came from the absolute truth, which was the Bible.
yeah.
And I was like, I can't just read it anymore. I need to study it. I don't need to study it like a theologian, but I need to study it to understand a lot more than I understand, because I feel like why didn't I know this stuff before? So it makes me go, I feel like I've been lied to, or I feel like I haven't been told, but I've been a believer the whole time. And then when I started studying it and surrounding myself with, the church I go to is kind of like expository apologetics. It's like, know what you believe and be able to back it up,
Hmm.
you know? Um, that was like, for me, and you'll probably relate because I think you're a lot the same way. It's like, cut all the fluff, tell me what to do. And
Yeah.
if you need to criticize me, do it constructively, but you don't need to say, hey, I hope you can do it this way. No, take the lead step and block and go upfield. Like, just tell me what to do. And that's how I really approach a lot of life. So when I started studying, I started surrounding myself with those pastors and people from the church. I was like, why was I not told this? Growing up, I've been
Right.
going to church my whole life. And so, there's reasons why, but I'm not going to, it doesn't matter. Those reasons don't matter anymore. It's,
Yeah.
it's what's going on
Well,
today.
I think the Bible's a book that doesn't get read enough, right?
Eh,
It
It's,
gets
yeah, no,
referenced to, throw out a
yes.
quote here and
And
there,
taken
but
out of context.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's taken
do
out of
you study
context
it? Do
so
you get
much.
in God's word on
Yes.
a daily basis? And there's times
Yes.
in life when I get away from getting in the word like I should,
Yep.
and then it's like working out. I always relate it to working out. You go a couple weeks or a couple months without working out, and then you start working out, and you're like, man, why did I ever stop? Because the next day you're a little
Right.
sore, you're feeling it, you're feeling good about
Yes.
yourself, and it's
Yes.
the same
Yes.
thing getting in God's word. You're like, man,
Yeah.
why did I
Yeah.
ever why did I take a week off or whatever? Get back in, and you want to get in that next day, right? And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
true. And I always equate it to that same feeling
Yeah.
working out. And so I try to do it. I try to stack mine together, right? Get up, get my
Right.
coffee, get a little word
Yeah.
in, and then boom, it's go to work out. If you
Yeah.
do those two things for me, if I start my day with those two things, that's a pretty good day. If I don't get anything else done the rest of the day, I've got two pretty important building blocks done.
Exactly. The foundational, fundamental, most important things for me are hitting my knees first thing when I get up and asking for help, and really, bringing glory to God that day.
Yeah.
And if I have an opportunity to share the word with somebody, I'd take advantage of it
Yeah,
and kind of
that's
let them
great.
know the truth. Yeah.
And as you have time to reflect, and as we film this, it's 9/11, right? And
Yeah.
it's always great to have perspective, right? And
Yes.
and
Yeah.
and no better time than to think back to that day on 9/11 in
Yeah.
2001. I mean, your problems, pale in comparison. Do you think about what families and loved ones
Yeah.
and individuals went through that day and
Yeah.
continue to go through, right? The
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
responders that deal with it. But
Yeah.
perspective is a great thing, and it's and I use this example too. You get, I think a lot of your story, Tony, gets blown up. You were bigger than life and all that. But
Yeah.
the thing they always like to reference is, your draft class, right? And let's be
Yeah.
honest,
Yeah.
your draft class was ridiculous, right? I mean,
Incredible.
you got
Incredible.
your second overall, you got Aikman before you, you got Barry
Yeah.
Sanders, you got Derrick
Yeah.
Thomas, and you got Deion Sanders as the next
Yeah.
picks, right? All four of them are
Yeah.
in the Hall of Fame. There's probably
Yeah.
only a draft class that has four of the five top picks in the Hall of Fame if you had to research it.
I think
Um,
you're right.
but perspective's a great thing. I ended my career on Arrowhead Stadium with a blown out knee, three ligament job, a side shot on a kickoff, right? And
Right.
I know immediately my career is over. I'm done, right? It's my seventh year, and I can
Right.
tell it's catastrophic. And
Right.
I, come home, and a couple months later, I'm laying on the couch. Not even 2 months later, I'm laying on the couch, and I had played most of that game because Mark Bruner, our starting tight end, had broken his ankle in the first
Okay.
quarter. So I played that whole game against Derrick Thomas, and I would have started the next two games last year in my contract.
Right.
I would have started the next two games, and thinking, all right, man, I'm going to get a good shot here, going into my
Yeah.
contract here. And so I'm feeling sorry for myself laying on that couch about 6 weeks later, and across the ticker comes the news that Derrick Thomas is
Yeah.
dead in a car accident,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that gives me goosebumps now as I say that, because I just
Yeah.
remember thinking, man, I'm sitting here feeling sorry for myself
Right.
because I got a hurt knee and I can't play football anymore, right?
Right.
So that was my wake up call to, like, okay, man,
Yeah.
quit feeling sorry for yourself and get on with your life and attack it, and what's next,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So
Perspective.
yeah, so you've been a great example of that, and I thank you. I love that you came on, man. I connected to you on LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
late at night, actually, because you're 3 hours behind me. I saw you like one of
Right.
my posts or
Right.
something, so I messaged you, and I've been pumped
Yeah.
up ever since, man. Because like I said, I
That's
was the
awesome.
starstruck freshman coming into Michigan State, and now you're a grown man. You were a
Yeah.
grown man then, but you were still a boy in a lot of ways, right? As we all
Yes.
were.
Yes. Yeah.
It's cool to reunite with you, and do you get back
It
to
is.
East Lansing much at all in
Like,
recent years?
last time I went was when we had our I think it was 2015 or 16 when we had our 25th anniversary
Okay.
for our Rose Bowl team, which made me go, like, blew my mind. It's like 25 years, right?
Yeah.
And then that year, Coach D'Antonio's team went to the Rose Bowl, which
Yeah.
was
Oh, it would have
great.
been 13 then. Yeah. That would have been
Yeah.
15 years for
Or
the
yeah.
Rose Bowl.
So it was but it just blows my mind. Like, in a few weeks I'm going to be 58, and I think to myself, I don't internally, I don't feel 58. I feel
No,
like
I
I'm
hear
20
you.
something. You know what I'm saying? It's like my body,
58,
yeah,
I'm
okay.
54, and I just think, man, that sounds like
Right.
a big number, and I just
Right.
don't. My mind, I'm not that age, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And it's
crazy.
just, it is crazy. It's not what when we were growing up, even when we were in our 20s, to think of somebody as 58, you're going to be like, yeah, they're pretty much done, right? And it's like, well, yeah, a lot of things are done, but there's a lot of things to do,
No
and
doubt.
so it's
Yeah.
just, yeah, the body's, as you know, with yourself and myself and other players, and the body took a beating at one time, and so yeah, that stuff catches up, but internally I sure don't feel 58.
But you look good, man. You look like you're
I
working
feel
out
good.
still. How's your body
Yeah.
feeling, man?
It's last, I would say, last 5 or 6 years, things have compounded quicker.
Okay.
Like coming back from a slight injury is taking a lot longer.
Hmm.
Lower back right now, I would say, is probably my biggest issue. So I just have to be, even like simple things like getting out of the car, like not turning too fast, because last time I did that, I herniated a disc.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then you're down for 2, 3 months, and it's like, is it worth it? No, just get out of the car a little bit more carefully and try to improvise. But, again, in spite of all my pains, I'm grateful
Yeah, that's awesome.
because those pains came from something that I love to do. And so it's like, I remember
And the
walking into
reality,
sport.
you could have got those pains from a car accident,
Exactly,
at the end of
exactly.
the day.
And yeah, and even when we would go to Spartan Stadium sometimes, I remember one time vividly, second practice of the day, we were practicing in Spartan Stadium on a camp. It was a summer camp. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like 20, 21 years old, and I like my body's killing me. And I thought to myself, what's it going to be like when I'm 40 or 50? And then you take that attitude of, wow, I'm worried about that when it gets there, right?
I won't live that long. I'm not worried about
Right.
that. Yeah.
So it's not like any of this stuff is surprising me. It's like, why is my this hurt or that hurt? Or it's like, well, because you played football and you had weightlifted and you did all this stuff that was more, taxing on the body. But every time it starts to hurt to the point where I start to feel sorry for myself, I right away and I'll flip that switch into being grateful because it hurts for a reason. I was lucky to be able to do something that I wanted to do from being 11 years old as a dream, and this is just part of the deal,
And
you know.
and again, perspective. There's always somebody in worse straits, right? I mean, that's
Oh,
the end of the
absolutely,
day. I had the
absolutely.
misfortune of about 8.5 weeks ago stepping off my pontoon, and one of my feet slipped, and I caught all my body weight on the boat and tore my pec.
Oh,
So that was fun.
ouch.
I avoided surgery, but that's we don't bounce
Yeah.
back at 54 like we did at 24.
No,
And the
no.
frustrating thing to me is when you have these injuries back in the NFL, man, you got treatment 2, 3 times a day.
Oh,
You got stin, you got ice, you got stretching, massage.
yeah,
I get
yeah.
one PT appointment a week, and he's like, "All right, here's your homework. Go do this." And I'm like, "Wait, no, man, I got to be ready for next week's game. What are you
Right,
talking about?"
right.
He's like, "No, this isn't going to be a
100%.
week's thing. This is going to be a month's thing. So just
Right,
get
right.
cracking."
Yeah.
So,
Plus,
well,
yeah, we have that, and then we're not 20 something anymore.
yeah.
We're not, so we heal so much quicker when we're younger.
It's definitely something you got to stay on top of and
Yeah.
maintain. So, well, Tony, I thank you greatly for coming on, and
Thanks, Mitch.
don't be a stranger. If you come around, head up to East Lansing, or let me know, and I'd love to, have a see you and say hello. But I know all of Spartan Nation has great memories of the view and the teams that you were on, and
Yeah,
certainly that Rose Bowl year was a
yeah.
tremendous memory for everybody,
Yeah.
and for
It
me,
was a
even the
great
days.
Michigan State. Yeah, Michigan State was some of the best years of my life. I mean, when I look back, and now I have some perspective because I'm, been removed for so long. It's like those years were just so much fun. I mean, not just with football, but with just the camaraderie of the guys you meet
Yeah,
from all over the country and different lifestyles, different backgrounds, and it's like, we all gelled together
yeah,
and we played as
black,
a unit.
white, didn't matter, man.
Yeah, it didn't
You're all
matter.
brothers, you know.
Exactly, exactly. So it's and at that time you're a little bit more carefree because you're young and you're in college, so you get going out with the guys and going and shooting pool or whether it's Dooley's. I don't even know if Dooley's is around anymore, but we used to go to the Silver Dollar Saloon and listen to
Oh
rock
yeah,
and roll. I know that place is not around anymore, but it's like all those things. There was a lot of good memories, a lot of great memories, and great teammates, and I mean, just phenomenal coaching staff. Not just as far as the skill of coaching, but the skill of coaching how to deal with life. When you look at George, when you look at Nick, and not everybody is a fan of those guys, but I tell you what, I would go to battle any day of the week for those guys. And it
I
broke my heart when George passed, and because he influenced a lot of stuff in my life for the good.
yeah, I was blessed in that regard with because I was on the board at Michigan State for 8 years while
Yeah,
George was on it, so it was
yeah,
fun for me, and George was eight in his 70s and 80s at that point, but.
right,
For me, it was fun to get to know him as an adult versus the
yeah,
kid that was under his
right,
tutelage, and there was a little
right,
bit of
right,
intimidation there. You didn't really want to be in George's office, at least I
right.
didn't. So there was that separation between leader and troops,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it
yeah,
was
yeah,
cool to get to know him on a more personal level later in
yeah,
life, and but he still had the same old one-liners, and that guy has made an indelible imprint on everybody
yeah,
he coached, and that's the
yeah.
cool thing, and that's what we can do as as parents, as coaching all my
Yep,
kids and trying to impart some of that wisdom, down the line.
absolutely.
So. Well,
100%.
listen, this has been fun. This episode's been brought to you by Mitch Lyons Wealth, your best game plan to protect, grow, and win retirement. And Tony, I just I thank you again, and I appreciate your time,
It was a
and
pleasure.
before I let you go, tell us what you're doing now. I know you're out in Arizona, but what's life got you doing now as far as
Yeah,
career?
well, I'm still, last since 2005, been doing professional photography, but in this last year, just with so many things going on with the economy and stuff, I needed to get another iron in the fire. So I'm still doing photography, but my bigger concentration is with a company called Vero that I work for, and they create F&I products for car dealerships. So we're a B2B business where we do service contracts, also gap insurance, and then all the ancillary products like tire and wheel, windshield, you know performance packages, all stuff that dealerships will present to their customers when they're going through the
Sure.
finance office.
So is that
So
a national scope?
yes,
Okay.
yeah. Right now, because I've only been at this job now for 2.5 months, still obviously an Arizona focus, but I can already see myself moving towards the northern part of Arizona out of the valley here because I've talked to so many dealerships down here already. And once those get exhausted as far as the state goes, then definitely, three things on my radar, definitely, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana, because I had played football in those. But Michigan will be the first. And actually, that might happen sooner than later going to Michigan just because it gives me another excuse to come back and watch a game
Sure.
and just kind of reconnect with a bunch of people and still call it a business trip.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
So
Tony, thanks a lot. I'm glad things are going great. For folks, if they're interested in looking at some of your photography, how can they do that?
they can go to my website, which is just my full name, TonyMandarich.com. They can Google it or just type it in the URL bar, and that's a lot of the photography work that I've done. Everything from commercial advertising to portraits to certain, special projects where there's a lot of compositing involved with Photoshop, and you can really nowadays, and this was all before AI started,
Right.
but you can create anything that you can imagine as far as like a depiction of an image, or if you want to create one. And that's what I found so interesting was that it never gets boring, right? It's
Yeah,
always different.
and
So
not to extend this interview, but there's so much I don't have time to cover it all with you. But I was reading that your interest in photography actually stemmed from your Venice Beach,
yes,
cover
the
with
photo
SI,
shoot.
right? And
Yeah.
that's kind of where your
Yeah.
interest. And but I've been to your site, and some of your stuff's really cool. So I encourage
Thank
people
you.
to check that out. But I may be in touch with
Thank
you
you.
for a side venture too. You never know. I'm not the most
Absolutely.
technical.
Look,
I'm not the most technical guy, so yeah,
right.
I think you could probably help me there. So. Well, Tony, thanks a lot. And hey,
Mitch,
have a
thank
great
you.
fall. And hopefully our Spartans can keep the momentum going. They're 2-0
I
as we
hope
speak
so.
here. And hopefully they're turning it around with a new coaching regime. But Tony Manders, thanks for coming on the show. And we really appreciate it,
Thanks.
buddy.
Thanks, Mitch.